A few years ago, there was an interesting article in the Wall Street Journal about airline companies. You know, they compete on everything, including how many inches of space your knees have. Okay? I mean, and they actually measure this, and they try to outdo, without losing a lot of revenue from getting rid of a row of seats. That, you know, they find out what is the marginal cost of getting rid of one row of seats and expanding the amount of a quarter of an inch or a half an inch that legroom that people have. Will we have added revenue because more people want to fly with us than the revenue we lose from taking out one row of seats? Okay, so that type of thing, they're continually trying to differentiate to the consumer's benefit. And Munn recognized this. Okay, remember, he's writing in the early 1930s. Now, he defined monopoly then as the antithesis of competition. A state of affairs in which rival producers lack either the freedom, willingness, or capability, okay, to compete. Okay? He, like Menger, pointed out that there's two types of monopoly. One he called formal monopoly, and the other he called true monopoly. Okay? And he defined them in the following way. He said, formal monopoly is monopoly shorn of its power by potential competition. So, you have the National Football League, okay, to use that example again, or you can even use Major League Baseball. There's always potential competition. Notice that those professional sports leagues are continually trying to better their product. They're continually experimenting with new rules. They're continuously experimenting, for example, football is, with somehow shortening the game because it's gotten so long on television. Why should they do that? There's no other football league. Why should they care about what consumers think? Why shouldn't they just say, here's the product? Tough, you know, no one else is competing. Well, because they're only a formal monopoly, according to Munn. They're not a true monopoly. There is always potential competition. And potential competition can be expanded out. In other words, people can turn the television off or turn to other types of entertainment on television. Or they can go to other types of sporting events or entertainment events. Okay, they don't. So there's always potential competition operating. Okay, so he goes on and says, no monopolist can exercise monopoly power if the way is clear for others to enter the market whenever profits are tempting. The ever-present possibility of potential competition has the same effect as actual competition, and the monopolist is effectively precluded from charging a price that yields more than ordinary returns. Okay, this is, again, you know, straight Austrian economics. He also points out that potential competition, like actual competition, keeps the elasticity of demand for the single producer's good extremely elastic, meaning that people have the option of cutting back tremendously in the amount they purchase because new firms will come in. So effectively, the demand curve is very, very elastic. And he went on to maintain that occurrences of formal monopoly are widespread, and he pointed to examples of a small town where there exists a single physician, a single drugstore, a single bakery, a single dairy farm, and a single bookseller. If any of them tried to raise their prices significantly, potential profits would appear, and others would enter and begin to compete. Okay. Now, what about true monopoly? Okay. He says that true monopoly is one that possesses genuine monopoly power. He defines monopoly power as consisting in the ability to regulate either market supply, okay, as we saw with Menger, or market price so as to maximize profit. Okay. He points out, like Menger does, that usually what a monopolist will do, if he is a true monopolist, will set a price and then allow the quantity to adjust itself. Okay. He makes sure that he emphasizes that a monopolist cannot say, I'm going to charge, I'm going to charge a price, let's say the National Football League. I'm going to charge a price of $1,000 a game, and I'm going to fill my stadium with 80,000 people. They can't do that. If they want to charge $1,000 a game, well, then they have to be comfortable with the fact that only maybe 1,000 people will come. On the other hand, if they want to sell 80,000 seats, they have to charge an average of maybe under $100 a game. Now, what are the factors underlying monopoly price? He points out, like Mises does later on, that there has to be an elasticity of demand for the product that is inelastic. Okay. Also, costs of production come in when we're talking about determining how much to produce for the future. And And he talks about the attitudes of courts and the public themselves towards monopoly and the interest in future business. In other words, in a sense, you're competing against yourself in the future. If the buyer purchases the product now, he may still carry some sort of a resentment because he feels that he or she has been ripped off. And therefore, you'll lose their business in the future. So entrepreneurs take into account the future effect of price increases. And sometimes to our detriment. For example, when a new, very popular movie opens, you see lines around the block at many places. The first day. Let's say Star Wars. Okay. Why don't they raise the price? They could probably fill the theater if they raise the price the first weekend to $50 or $75. Because even though there are people that may very well come to the movie theater at that price and fill the movie theater, and there won't be any lines, it'll be the equilibrium price. They're sending it below the equilibrium. There'll be many people that are excluded by that very, very high price that will not come back to that movie theater. Okay. So let me show you the first graph to show you where a monopolist, the difference from between monopoly and competition, or a monopoly price and competitive price. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Let me. Do I need to make? Can everyone see that? Yeah, okay. Let's assume that the cost is 3. Okay, you see that the normal cost line I have there? It's $3 per unit, right? And let's assume for the moment that the firm has already produced 7.5 units. Okay, because that's where that point should be. It should be at 7.5. Right there. This is taken from Munn's book, this diagram. Okay. Now, the curve, the downward sloping curve is known as the buyer's reserve valuations. Okay. Each point represents the highest price that they'll pay for that quantity. So the highest price that the monopolist can get for, let's say, 11 units is $3. I'm sorry. The highest price they can get for 3 units is $11. On the other hand, the highest price they can get if they want to sell 5 units, if you follow that line up, if 5 units is $9. Okay, the highest price they can get for 7.5 units, right there, is $3. That's the competitive price. This is the problem with monopoly price theory, which we'll show is also a problem in Mises. That's the competitive price because that's the normal cost. $3 not only includes the cost of producing the good, but it includes the interest on the capital invested. So in other words, at $3, this monopolist would be earning a normal profit. But looking at that demand curve, we can tell it's extremely inelastic. So what the monopolist will do is if it's before he's actually produced, if he knows what his cost curve is and he knows what this demand curve is going to look like, he's going to try to maximize his profit. Okay, and the profit is the rectangle between the difference between $9 per unit and $3 per unit cost times the number of units produced. Okay, so if he charges $9, he can produce 5 and sell 5 units. Okay, that's $45 minus the $3 per unit, $15. He can earn a profit of $30. You'll find that that's the highest possible profit that can be earned there. Okay, so. However, he cannot say, I'm going to sell at $9 and I'm going to sell all 7.5 units that I produced. Right? If he's already produced them, let's say. He can't do that. Because if he wants to sell 7.5 units, he has to reduce the price to $3. So again, he can control either the price or the quantity, but not both. Right? So if he already produced the output, okay, and he had it in inventory, what would he do with the other 2.5 units, assuming that they're perishable? He would destroy them. Okay? On the other hand, if this is a situation that he sees in the future, he would not produce more than 5 units. He'd produce the 5 units and he'd earn a large profit, much above the normal profit. Okay. If there were two competing firms, and given the same data, they would produce 7.5 units and the price would be 3. Okay? As long as you have 2 or more non-colluding firms competing with one another, you would get the competitive outcome according to Munn. The fact that you have one guy allows him to determine the supply. That's the key here. the ability to set the supply or the price, but not both. Okay. And he draws another demand curve that I don't want to put in here, which is much more elastic, meaning it's flatter, and he shows that there he can only raise his price from 3 to 6, okay, and he can only cut back to 6 units, and that would maximize his profits. I didn't draw that demand curve in; it would kind of clutter things up, but he realizes back in 1933 that the more elastic the demand curve, the lower the monopoly price that can be gotten. Okay. Now, he wants to analyze the effects of changes in costs of production on equilibrium in a monopoly market. And he begins with the case that usually Mengerian price theorists, including Rothbard, begin with. And that is the case in which the monopoly good is a fixed stock. For example, you have your harvest. This is agriculture, let's say, and you dominate the tomato market in some area. You're the only one who produces tomatoes in that area. Okay, and they're already produced. Right? How many will you sell? How many will you destroy? And I can show you a graph that, again, comes from the book. He shows once again that the buyers have a certain demand curve that they control. Okay, they determine, and you can think of this in terms of thousands of pounds or thousands of dozens of tomatoes, or thousands of pounds of tomatoes that are sold. Okay, it's a downward sloping demand curve, and let's say the cost of producing these tomatoes were $1 a pound, and that then is the competitive price. The competitive price is $1, and 11,000 pounds would be sold. All 11,000 have been produced. Okay. However, if only one person is the producer, that person has the option of restricting the supply. In this case, you would want to, again, this rectangle here, you want to maximize the size of that rectangle, because that's your profit rectangle. They have the option of restricting supply from 11,000 pounds to 6,000 pounds, that is, destroying 5,000 pounds of the tomatoes or allowing them to rot, and bringing to market 6,000 pounds and selling them at $6 a pound. Okay? Now, this doesn't happen usually on the free market. Okay? We know that under agricultural price supports, the U.S. government, the Canadian government, for example, years ago had billions of eggs destroyed to keep prices up. Okay, so destruction of a stock is really something that entrepreneurs want to avoid. They want to make sure that they tailor their production to the highest profit price that they can get. Okay. Okay, but according to Munn, this can happen on the free market. And notice Munn says the costs don't matter. Once you have the tomatoes, what you're looking for is to maximize your revenue. And you maximize your revenue by producing or by selling 6,000 pounds at $6 each, which would give you $36,000 in total revenue. Any other point on that curve, if you figured it out, would give you less total revenue. Okay. Okay, and then in the final graph, I'm just going to show you what Munn does is to show price formation under conditions of continuous production in which the monopolist is in the long-run position of planning for future demand, and therefore does consider his production costs in establishing his what's called the selling valuation.